Story 1. My dad's coworker, whom I will refer to as Jack, cheated on his wife. He comes from a religious family, and the marriage was arranged between his parents and his wife's parents. While the wife was fully involved in the marriage, Jack despised the idea of his parents choosing whom he would wed. He felt trapped because his wife was against divorce, claiming it would make her look bad. However, what finally opened his eyes was when his parents and in-laws began demanding that he have children, which made him realize they were completely toxic. He cheated on his wife as a way for her to initiate the divorce and moved across the country to where he lives now. 15 years later, with 3 children from his new wife, to whom he is happily married, he does not regret a thing. Story 2. I was in a 4-year relationship, engaged for 3 years, with someone who wanted to completely control me but gave nothing to the relationship. He never listened when I voiced my unhappiness or promised the world but never delivered. I tried to leave a few times, and he would put on tears and guilt, saying things like everyone always left him and threatened to harm himself. He was also the kind of person who hardly ever wanted physical intimacy, which left me feeling completely unattractive. But when we did engage, he would force it even if I didn't want it. He controlled me mentally, emotionally, physically, and financially. I went out of town for 3 weeks to visit my family. I begged him to come, even offering to pay for everything. He flatly refused, saying he hated the city and my family. I was there over Christmas and New Year's, and ended up going to my friend's New Year's party where I met a guy. I immediately disclosed my relationship. We talked, and he was really easy to communicate with despite just meeting. I expressed sadness about how my partner never wanted to do anything, and how I wouldn't be getting a New Year's kiss. He said he didn't want to leave me disappointed. That kiss led to a week-long affair. We kept meeting up, and it quickly became physical. I decided that regardless of what happened with the new guy, my engagement was over. I wasn't in love with him. When I eventually went back home, I broke up with him and told him why. He became aggressive and screamed at me, calling me every name he could. I get it. I deserved it. We both made mistakes. I eventually married my affair partner, and we are still together and very strong 10 years later. We have a child, and I have no regrets. I've never strayed from him because he truly cares about me. Story 3. This is my biggest regret in life. I married my childhood girlfriend at 19. I bought a cabin and fixed it up, then a small brick house that was in the family. I had never really dated anyone else, and her family was very racist and Southern Baptist in the strongest sense. She would leave me on the weekends after I worked 56-hour weeks, so I never spent much time with her during our brief marriage. Aside from this significant issue, there was nothing terribly wrong. I was young and naive. At 23, I met someone on a video game who was also married. We ended up meeting, fell for each other, and both marriages fell apart when it was discovered. We had a couple of kids together, were together for 10 years, and then she cheated on me with a couple of guys, the main one being someone she met in another multiplayer online game. I lived with so much guilt and regret for hurting someone. Still an issue. I like to think I got what I deserved because it hurt so badly losing my family due to her affair. I would cry myself to sleep on the floor every night for months. I like to think my first wife, whom I hurt, did the same, and I was suffering as she did, as I deserved. Some people cheat and continue to cheat throughout their lives. For me, it's a lesson I learned and will never do again, no matter what. I would prefer anything over hurting someone like that again. If any of you are thinking about cheating, don't. It's not worth the damage to their soul or yours. Story 4. I started feeling betrayed. They would come into my life and then disappear for long periods. I felt a craving for a special kind of taste that only they could provide. One day, I had enough and said, "You know what, I'm done." I went to the store and got ingredients to make the McRib at home. Story 5. I have been on both sides, and honestly, it is complicated. I was unhappy in my relationship but did not know how to communicate it at the time. I met someone else, and it felt like a spark I had not felt in a long time. It was not right, and looking back, I regret not being more honest and not ending things properly before starting something new. Story 6. He cheated first, then we agreed to an open relationship. He broke the rules of the open relationship repeatedly and continued to betray my trust. I only stayed because I was a college student who couldn't afford rent on my own. Then Prince Charming entered my life. Meeting up after work turned into dinner, drinks, and intimacy. The next day, I broke up with my ex. I have been married to Prince Charming for 3 years now. Story 7. Not me, but my mom. He cheated first multiple times with other men. He's a narcissistic person, so I'm glad he received his comeuppance in that way. Also, I wouldn't have been born. Does it justify it? I'm not sure, and I don't care regardless. I am upset about what he put my mom through. Story 8. I have cheated on 2 partners. The first time I was 21. He was abusive, and when I tried to leave, he threatened to kill himself, claiming it would be my responsibility for the rest of my life. I found someone I could turn to during that abuse. I never felt guilty for what I did because he treated me terribly. The second time I still feel terrible about. He never found out. However, he did not engage with me. All he wanted to do was play video games and drink. I couldn't get him to go anywhere with me, so I started doing everything alone. We slept in separate rooms. I worked overnight shifts, and he would yell at his video games all day while I tried to sleep, even after I asked him not to. If I made a single noise during the night on my days off, it became an issue. He would wake me up after I worked 3 12-hour shifts to ask if I was going to cook dinner for him while he played games and drank. He also threatened to kill himself if I left. It reached a point where I saw no purpose in being alive anymore because I was so depressed. I found someone who gave me attention. Eventually, we got back together, but the same issues kept recurring. I didn't cheat on him again, but I eventually gave him the option of couples therapy or I would leave, and he refused therapy. Story 9. I dislike cheating, but I believe some people should not enter this discussion if they do not want to hear the reasons behind someone's actions. The question is, what is your story? Those sharing their experiences are simply doing that. This is not a place for confession, and we are not here to demand anyone atone for their actions. We are here to read the responses to this question. Once again, I dislike cheating, lying, and betrayal. No one enjoys being betrayed. If you have been hurt and it still feels fresh, it may be best to take care of yourself by skipping this conversation and not reading further. Story 10. She cheated on me, and I found out when one of her friends told me about it. I didn't let on that I knew, and I stayed with her for a few weeks. Then I cheated on her for revenge, told her immediately, and broke up with her. It did absolutely nothing for me, and I regret ever doing it. I wish I had just kept the moral high ground. Story 11. Notice how almost everyone who admits they cheated still finds a way to make the other partner sound like the bad guy. It's amusing how that always happens. Story 12. To be completely honest, it is because I went through a period of time when I was not a good person. I cheated physically once, although I would say there was a lot of emotional cheating leading up to it. I was young and in university, and my high school partner and I never saw each other. I was receiving attention from another guy and got a rush from the secrecy and forbidden aspect of it all. One day, when this guy and I were on mushrooms, I gave in. I felt terrible then, and I still feel terrible now. I ended my relationship the next day. Turns out he also cheated on me. However, I still feel bad and have not cheated in any relationship since. Cheating is a horrible thing to do, and I will always regret it. Story 13. I dislike this thread. It's surprising how every single comment is the same. He was abusive, but I met my Prince Charming. So I cheated, but I don't regret it. I expected 1 or 2 of those stories, but almost every single one. Come on. Story 14. Post-traumatic stress disorder fueled self-destructive behavior. I became involved in the rave scene, and substances like cocaine, MDMA, and ketamine exacerbated the issue. I became infatuated in a drug-induced haze, but that relationship did not work out. I separated from my partner, and we lived apart for about a year. However, we continued to see each other and ultimately got her pregnant, which was something we had been trying for years. Many years later, we are still together and working through the damage, but we have become good partners and great parents. Story 15. It was not an honorable moment for me. but I was truly in love with the other person, and we have been happily together for more than 4 years. We are now engaged. Sometimes love is messy. Story 16. I can't believe people are commenting that these victims should have respected their abusers more. Story 17. My ex-husband and I had a challenging relationship for years. We got married young, and it became high conflict quickly. I finished school, but he never did. He lost his job almost immediately after I graduated and spent most of the next 5 years unemployed. He had health problems and a poor temper, crossing the line into physical abuse on several occasions. We separated 3 times, but fear kept us trying again. I was quite overweight and worried I wouldn't find someone new. During our final separation, our dog died. I was distraught. I loved that dog. My mother was recovering at my home from a serious injury, and my stepfather had dementia. Surprisingly, my ex was quite supportive during that time. I convinced myself that the 6 months apart were good for us, so we decided to try again, and he moved back in. I needed help and hoped he would be a good partner, so I deceived myself into believing things could be different. Unfortunately, it quickly returned to the same negativity. We were fighting again. He was signing up for more classes, having spent 9 years and about $25,000 without advancing beyond his sophomore year. Within weeks, I regretted letting him back into my life. I was 32 and knew I wanted children. I realized that if I had kids with him, they might inherit his traits, and I was afraid I wouldn't love them. I had nightmares about this. At the same time, a younger man at my work caught my attention. I didn't want to go home, and he was going through a difficult breakup, so we started hanging out for drinks and going two-stepping. I had no intention of developing a connection. I was just enjoying time with someone funny and kind. Although I found him attractive, he was 24 and a subordinate, while I was older and overweight, so I didn't entertain the thought. After several weeks, he confessed that he had feelings for me. Meanwhile, my ex was staying up late to study for a test that I later learned he failed while incurring $12,000 in credit card debt I didn't know he had from online activities. I told him I'd be home late since he'd be studying, and I went out dancing with what was supposed to be a group from work but ended up being just the 2 of us. We danced with each other and others, enjoying several rounds of drinks. To sober up, we ended up at a diner afterward. He held my hands, caressing them gently, and told me he was surprised how soft they were, having imagined they'd be rougher since I'm a horseback rider. It took my breath away. He had imagined my hands? The tone of the night changed. I didn't know what to say. He told me he was falling in love with me and thought I felt the same, but he didn't want to pursue anything until I ended my marriage. I hesitated to confirm because I hadn't fully considered it. I told him I didn't know what to think. We cashed out and went for a 2 a.m. walk by a lake in his neighborhood. My ex was blowing up my phone, and I ignored the calls. I needed time to think. He pulled me close, ran his fingers through my hair, and nuzzled my neck. I hugged him and then drove the 30 minutes home. When I arrived home, I walked out to my horse pasture, hugged my horse, and went inside to find my ex asleep and snoring. Looking at him filled me with disappointment, disgust, and resentment. I was angry at myself for my actions and angry at him for the years of turmoil. The next morning, I told the other man that I would talk to my husband and end things the following week after his test. I didn't want to upset him, as I thought he had been trying. We agreed to avoid seeing each other in person until then, although we exchanged countless messages and saw each other at work daily. That Thursday, my ex failed his test, and that night I told him I was done. He asked if it was because of the man I had been spending time with. I told him the truth. Not directly. It was because we hadn't worked in years, but the timing was partly due to my feelings for someone else. He wanted to know if I had been intimate with him. I told him I hadn't, which was true, but I had strong feelings. My ex exploded, understandably, and we went through an ugly divorce. I got engaged to my now husband about 18 months into our relationship and married nearly 3 years later. I am happy, truly happy. I love him. He is the greatest love of my life and the best decision I ever made. I have support. He's a wonderful father, and we have accomplished much together as a team. He's never let me down, never lost his job, never spent money on adult content, and has never harmed me. He's my best friend. Story 18. My ex would threaten to harm himself anytime I attempted to leave him. He actually ended up in the hospital during my last attempt. I was miserable. He continued to shower me with affection and threatened self-harm to make me stay. I met someone I connected with and ended up being unfaithful. I told my ex, and he became very upset and broke up with me. For a while, he stalked me and tried to win me back again, but I refused him. I think he finally understood that we were never going to be together again when the person I was unfaithful with and I made our relationship official. We have been happily together for 5 years now. Honestly, I regret being unfaithful, but I felt I had no other choice. If I could go back, I would have remained strong and firm when I tried to leave the first time. Story 19. After 8 years together, I discovered he was planning to leave me and take all our assets after asking me to quit my job and financially rely on him. He was suicidal, addicted to pornography, and claimed my sexual assault was a burden on his sexuality. I reconnected with someone I had always liked throughout my childhood and began having sex with him. Part of it was out of resentment, while another part of me was curious about what it would feel like to be with another person since he was my first. Regardless, it wasn't the right way to address my marital issues. Within a week of being with the other man, I asked for a divorce. I didn't pursue anything serious with him, but cheating prompted me to decide to leave much sooner than I would have otherwise. Story 20. I was earning 3 times his salary, so I was basically the one in charge in our relationship. My ex spent his money on his wants like new gadgets and clothes. His salary became his allowance. If he needed something, I would give him money. When he needed a new phone or wanted expensive clothes, I provided them without hesitation. This guy, who treated me like his sugar mom, had the audacity to verbally and physically abuse me whenever things didn't go his way. I cheated on him with my now husband, who treats me much better than he ever could. I was with a man who had financial stability, which my ex never had. I am not proud of cheating, but I am happily married now, while my ex remains where I left him. I dodged a bullet. Story 21. My ex was physically and emotionally abusive. I was 21 at the time and he was 26. It was my first serious relationship. Before ending things with my ex, I met my now husband, who showed me what real love looked like from the moment we met. This will be our 4th year married, totaling 5 years together, and we have a beautiful family. I could not be more thankful that my husband came into my life when he did. He is truly my best friend and the greatest love of my life. Story 22. This thread contains many judgmental individuals who have clearly never been in an abusive relationship or a deteriorating marriage, naively believing that leaving such situations is as simple as walking out the door. They judge those who have sought a desperate escape. I understand that cheaters are extremely disappointing. However, there is a fundamental difference between opportunistic cheating and desperation cheating. The former occurs when someone is trying to have it all, indulging in superficial desires or a sex addiction. The latter happens when someone is deep in a dark place with no way out, long past the moment of, I should break up with them, but I just don't know how. And then they discover a glimmer of hope. I hope everyone has the opportunity to remain that naive and experience only safe, healthy, and satisfying relationships with partners who communicate and cooperate throughout their lives. I hope you are not financially dependent on someone to the extent that you cannot leave, and that you do not have children with someone you should never have been with. Story 23. I was 21, a self-centered kid. I was arguing with my boyfriend at the time and decided to take a weekend away. I met another guy and was immediately captivated. I couldn't reach my boyfriend to end things because he was blocking my calls. I ended up being with this other guy. I felt immense guilt, but also a connection that was hard to ignore. Fast forward 14 years. My ex is now a close friend, and that other guy is my husband. We've been together ever since. It's a strange situation, and I have regrets about my actions. Story 24. He cheated on me first, so I did it for revenge. I should have just broken up with him, but I was foolish and stayed for a couple more years. Story 25. I cheated on my boyfriend of 4 years and married the man I cheated with. My husband then cheated on me with a much younger person. Karma has a way of returning the favor. Story 26. Not me or my family. Someone I know cheated on his wife, divorced, and stayed with the person he cheated with, starting a whole new life. This all happened over 20 years ago, and everyone has moved on. He, his ex-wife, and his current wife, the one he cheated with, get together for holidays and important life events for their adult children. Everyone is fairly amicable. Story 27. I was in a long-term relationship with my ex. We moved across the country together, which made me very isolated, as he was all I had. He had shown signs of being abusive before the move, which I largely ignored due to my naivete, but once we moved, all hell broke loose. He was a heavy alcoholic and extremely verbally abusive, and often physically abusive as well. He would also harm himself if I upset him. I had no other friends or family there, and my job did not pay enough for me to live on my own in a relatively high cost of living city. We also got rid of my car during the move, as it was too old to make it across the country, so I was dependent on him for transportation. I started becoming closer with people at work, as they were my only escape from him. They unfortunately witnessed some of his erratic behavior, as he would stumble in their drunk fairly often, and I began to open up to them more about what I was going through. In particular, there was one coworker who always seemed very realistic and was a good listener. For a long time, no boundaries were crossed. I didn't have feelings for him, we never texted about anything outside of work, and we didn't hang out unless in a larger group. After almost a year of this friendship, I realized how bad things were with my ex and that he was going to kill me if I didn't escape. Around the same time, I recognized my feelings for my coworker. I also landed a better-paying job with benefits that would allow me more stability on my own, which was walkable from my apartment. So, I tried to break up with my ex once and for all. It didn't go well. He threatened to kill himself, and I ended up locking myself in the bedroom while he screamed and raged, attacking himself with a razor. It was incredibly traumatizing, and I didn't know what to do. He refused to leave, and I had nowhere else to go. Later that week was my last day at my old job, so I went out with my coworkers to celebrate. My ex was drinking somewhere else. My coworker offered to drive me home, and when he dropped me off, I asked him if he wanted to kiss me. He said yes, so we did. I ran into my apartment and immediately told him I had made a huge mistake, but it led to a confession from him that he had feelings for me for a while, but always wanted to respect my relationship and not cross boundaries. I ended up successfully ending things with my ex a few days later. It was horrific. He destroyed many of my belongings, punched holes in doors, left broken glass all over the apartment, and threatened to kill me with a knife in his hand. It was so loud that multiple neighbors called the police. They showed up, and he fled, never to return. I haven't seen him since. However, I did start dating my former coworker, and I still am to this day. He was there for me through every step of the healing process, took things slow and gently, and ultimately helped me get through so much trauma. He is an incredible partner who has never even raised his voice at me. He has made me believe in love again, and I hope to spend the rest of my life with him. Am I proud of cheating? Absolutely not. Am I glad I did it? Yes. The guilt of it gave me the final nudge to actually rid myself of my ex. It's ironic. I couldn't leave because he was abusing me, but when I made a mistake, I felt too guilty to stay. Does my partner worry he's going to lose me the way he got me? No, he's not a terrifying, abusive person. Story 28. Having a good excuse still doesn't make something wrong, everyone. Some of you are really gloating with these stories. Story 29. I left my husband for a man I barely knew online. He was full of romantic, sweet words, whereas my husband and I were drifting apart. I didn't love the new guy, but I wanted to see where it went, so I broke up with my ex before anything happened. I flew to see this guy, but after 2 trips, it was apparent that he was a bumbling embarrassment who had a habit of being the white knight for unhappily married women. He had unpleasant habits, like leaving his cat's mess around the house, and he didn't wash his hands after using the restroom. I broke up with him because he stopped taking his antidepressants and complained that nobody remembered his birthday, even though he had over 20 well-wishers on social media. He was a childish mess. I resolved to be single after that, but a couple of months later, my best friend suggested we date, and now we have been together for 10 years and married for 5. Loving him has been so different from loving my first husband. I feel everything so much more strongly. We still get along well with my ex and co-parent effectively. Story 30. At first, it was emotional, and that was the dangerous part. I started comparing my partner to someone else. Then it crossed a line. One night turned into another, and it wasn't just a mistake anymore. It became a whole situation. Leaving was messy, and it hurt everyone involved. I hated being viewed as the villain, but staying would have been worse. Looking back, I regret certain aspects of it, particularly how it unfolded. However, leaving a relationship that wasn't right for me was necessary. I just wish I had done it more smoothly. Story 31. I was a kid, 18 years old. My then boyfriend and I had the pregnancy talk about what would happen if I got pregnant. He told me he would wait for me at the bottom of the stairs with a wire coat hanger. It was then I realized our relationship was over, but I wasn't strong enough to end it. Eventually, I met a coworker and started to cheat. Story 32. I have been in a 10-year relationship, and I feel bad every day. I cheated because I was unhappy. I wasn't perfect either. I voiced my concerns numerous times, hoping things would get better, but they always reverted to the same issues. I found another woman to confide in and lean on. She also cheated on her partner at the time. We were on and off for 18 months, and when we tried to be a couple, it turned into a chaotic situation. When the pandemic hit, I used the excuse of lockdowns to avoid seeing her again, and thankfully, we were never living together. I am currently with someone else. We have been together for 5 years and have a baby. I am happy now, but occasionally, I have flashbacks to what I did, which can ruin my day. She didn't deserve it. She is much happier now with someone else, and so am I. Story 33. I cheated on my ex-boyfriend with my current husband. My ex-boyfriend was emotionally toxic, while my current husband provided a shoulder to cry on. Story 34. I had been dating a guy I met on Tinder for about a month when he had to go out of state for 3 months. I ended up meeting my now husband, and a few days later, I felt really bad about it and broke up with the first guy. I've been with my husband for almost a decade, but I still feel guilty about how it started. Story 35. Why do some cheaters refuse to be accountable for their actions? Claiming to be a victim of abuse is not a justifiable reason for cheating. 2 wrongs do not make a right. I have friends who were abused but did not cheat. They left the situation. Everyone reacts to abuse differently, but by cheating and remaining with the alleged abuser, what exactly are you expecting to happen? Story 36. I was unhappy and mistreated in the relationship. I met someone who made me feel seen during a time when I was very insecure. I told my partner a month later, after she confessed something that also hurt me, but she became angrier. I felt awful in the days after I did it and realized I should have left the relationship sooner. I know what I did was wrong, and I have vowed never to repeat it. Honestly, even if she treated me poorly, she did not deserve what I did to her. Story 37. I cheated on my ex-husband. We should never have gotten married. There was infidelity from the start on his side. Then we got married, and I found some disturbing content on his phone during our honeymoon, where a nearly 40-year-old man was hitting on 18-year-olds via Snapchat, including a girl we both worked with. After that, I felt completely out of love with him and felt trapped. I grew close with a coworker who was in an unhappy marriage, and we began a relationship. I spiraled after that. The following year was traumatic. Eventually, we separated, and I went down a dark path for a while, almost ending up in a similar relationship. However, a great therapist helped me start piecing my life back together. Then I met my now fiancé, and I realized that, as I wasn't ready for the good thing he had to offer, so I made myself ready. 3 years later, we are engaged with no fighting or infidelity. So much love and stability, and I am incredibly grateful. Story 38. I was dating a girl for 2 years. I had never identified as gay or bisexual or been attracted to anyone other than men before I met her. It just kind of happened, and I did love her. However, when I met my now husband, he was so kind and good-hearted, not your average rude guy. Honestly, I was looking for a way out of that relationship because it was toxic as well. We basically just got drunk all the time, fought, and the relationship was going nowhere. My now husband was persistent with me, but not in an aggressive way, if that makes sense. Long story short, I cheated on her with him, and we have now been together for 7 years and are expecting our first child. I don't have any regrets other than hurting the person I was with. Story 39. Most of these relationships are often over long before the cheating occurs. If you are in a hostile marriage for the sake of your children and haven't had sex or even shared a room in the past 4 years, is it really the end of the marriage if one of you cheats? I'm not saying there aren't people who ruin good relationships with dedicated, loving partners by cheating. However, it's misleading to suggest that this is always the case. These are often unhealthy, dysfunctional relationships with no future that have clearly ended in all but name. So why cheat instead of ending it? Because making it official can be difficult. You risk losing a lot in divorce, including your home, and you may never see your children again. It's often more appealing to seek a fulfilling relationship discreetly while maintaining the facade of a marriage that keeps your life stable. Life is messy and complicated, and there often aren't clear heroes and villains, victims and perpetrators. Things aren't as black and white as some might prefer to believe. Story 40. He was difficult to deal with and controlled every penny in that house. He used my children as pawns and threats. I did it to make him resent me so he wouldn't be so insistent on us staying together. It was nice having someone who actually cared if I came home, ate, or smiled. But it didn't work, and I learned the hard way. Story 41. Many individuals here seem to have had a difficult time with their unkind spouses. This certainly justifies infidelity, doesn't it? Story 42. I cheated on my girlfriend of 7.5 years with someone I started talking to online. I stayed in the relationship for too long out of obligation. I was afraid of being alone, so I remained in the relationship even though I was not happy. My partner was not abusive, but often passive-aggressive. I think I either fell out of love or lost interest, or simply felt depressed. Out of boredom, I slid into someone's direct messages looking to flirt with someone new. We hit it off really quickly, even though they live on the other side of the world. I kept it from my partner for about 2 weeks until the guilt made me physically ill. I sat my partner down and put everything on the table, not holding back any details. I felt like such an awful person for breaking the heart of someone I love. I am still talking to the other person, and it is honestly going really well. I know I am not a good person for this, and it is something I will have to live with. Story 43. I had been in a long-distance relationship without realizing how unhealthy it was for my mental health. I had 2 relationships with different men online, both of whom were good men. However, I made mistakes. I regret it, but it also showed me that I wasn't ready for any relationship. So, I've been here, single, and I probably will be forever. I don't mind. Story 44. Emotionally cheated for sure. The simple version is that my boyfriend did something terrible that broke my trust in him, not cheating. And I should have ended it right then. I was wrong not to. I was 20 and honestly thought people in love simply stayed together and worked through whatever issues arose. We barely saw each other because of our different schedules, so it was easy to carry on. I had a small crush on someone I worked with and knew he was interested in me as well. He cared, was ambitious, and made me laugh. We would go to parties with work friends and end up talking on the couch all night until sunrise. He hosted a dinner, and I stayed when everyone else left. I ended up falling asleep on his chest in his bed during a movie. We didn't hook up or anything, but I woke up the next morning knowing I wanted that every day. The next day, I broke up with my boyfriend and told him about the night before when he asked. He didn't believe that we just slept, but he realized I liked the guy more than just a random person, and that must have hurt. Anyway, that crush is sleeping next to me right now, 12 years later, happily married. Story 45. I trust my discernment. Covert narcissist is a descriptive term. You can interpret it how you like, but I'm not vilifying you. I am not imposing any morals on the situation. I was in a very similar situation. Instead of cheating and lowering myself to her level, I was honest and told her I would be talking to other people before it happened. I'm not saying I'm better than you. I'm just reminding you that there are no victims on this side of heaven. Story 46. I was 18 years old and being groomed by my boyfriend's father. I became close with a coworker who offered me a chance to escape and live with him. My boyfriend wouldn't let me leave unless I cheated on him, which would break his heart. To this day, I regret that decision. If I had just waited until my boyfriend graduated high school and we found our own place, things might have been different. He meant everything to me, but I needed to get away from his father. Story 47. There is a situation in the neighborhood where a 22-year-old was cheating on his 21-year-old girlfriend with a 37-year-old woman. He saw a chance and took it. There was no history between them and no one saw it coming. The young man and the woman both use cocaine regularly, and I guess they decided to do it together. He hasn't left her house in 3 days. When asked why by a neighbor, he said he hated that he had to ask or beg for intimacy with his girlfriend. They had been together for 4 years. She lost her home because of the drama he caused every night when he returned to her apartment. Now, I guess he believes he has found a home and someone who shares the same questionable habits. It's wild, especially since his girlfriend broke in this morning and caught them sleeping together. Naked. She took a picture and showed everyone. But they explained that he got into bed with her without her knowing. And the towel next to the bed? They spilled some lemonade. Now, she claims she has no evidence, so it might be the truth. Story 48. My boyfriend at the time was a terrible person. It was a 4-year relationship in college that was very toxic, with a lot of cheating on his part. I had a rough day after failing the test for my teacher certification. Staff at my student teaching position invited me out for a celebratory evening on the last day of school. I was initially planning to go home but ended up saying, "Why not?" and went with them. The staff got me quite drunk, and my now husband made a move. After a wonderful makeout session in front of everyone, I ended up sleeping in his bed that night. 10 years later, we have a home, a child, and the best life I could ask for. To this day, I swear I would still be with that college fool miserable if my husband hadn't saved me. Story 49. I was in a 3-year relationship that was slowly becoming more miserable, but neither of us wanted to be the one to end it. Everyone thought we were perfect high school sweethearts, which added pressure to make it work. I met someone and began emotionally cheating. Finally, I took the leap to end the relationship, which was painful for both of us, but ultimately I was at fault and lost people I cared about in the process. 13 years later, I'm still with the person I left for, and my ex is happily married with an adorable child. I regret how it ended, but am glad I chose the path that led me to be with someone I could be my authentic self with. Story 50. I became involved with my best friend, who humiliated me and treated me poorly. Eventually, he married my best friend. I can honestly say that he was a narcissist and spineless to this day. Story 51. I came from a highly neglectful and abusive family, and because of that, I was always sort of a dreamer. I met someone who saw potential in me, more than I ever saw in myself. We dated for about 3 years, moved in together, then got married. Her family was incredibly nice and welcoming, providing me with the support I had never experienced. But I continued to be a dreamer, focusing on art and similar pursuits, making some money but remaining underemployed. After about 12 years of marriage, she pressured me to get a traditional 9-to-5 job with benefits, which I reluctantly did. Shortly after, she seemed to lose all respect for me. It felt like payback for my previous lack of ambition, and she became impatient and rude. Eventually, she slapped me in the face for joking around. I was shocked and torn. She had a family that loved me, exactly what I had never had, but I now had a wife who was disrespectful and abusive. My sleep deteriorated, and I became depressed and suicidal. I decided to start working out to improve my health. I got into great shape and started feeling better. Then, women began paying me positive attention. My wife sensed my newfound confidence and became even more of a nightmare, plagued by insecurities about my attractiveness to others. One day, an opportunity presented itself, and I took it. I felt like a man again, someone who was appreciated for just being himself. Eventually, I met someone else I really liked, and we connected in every way imaginable. I moved out and requested a divorce. She issued a nasty ultimatum and I called her bluff. We haven't spoken since. Looking back, I wish I had cut things off when they reached a point of terminal unhappiness, but I was lost and confused. My own weakness prevented me from moving on before things escalated. Story 52. I suspect I was cheated on. I dated a bartender while I worked an outdoor job, starting at 6 a.m. She would go out with groups of men after closing time and admitted to skinny dipping with them. I was cool but upset. I'm no saint, but I didn't deserve that. I feel she brought my resentment on herself. I ended the relationship, and she left that day to go out and party. We lived together and couldn't afford rent without her, and she eventually brought men back to our house. I never did that. It's crazy to think that I believed she was the one. I was married for 10 years to my true partner, and we have 2 children. She always denied cheating, but every sign was there. Showering after coming home, hiding her phone, and not kissing me when she arrived. A female friend said she caught her alone with another man. I never had any proof, but nearly every red flag was present. Story 53. I dated a guy named M for 2.5 years. It was long distance for the last 1.5 years. Near the end, I realized I didn't love him anymore. It wasn't that he was a bad person or that he was abusive. I just knew it wasn't going to work out. There was a fundamental issue that I didn't think we could reconcile. I planned on breaking up with him during our next meeting, but that was still a month away. I went to a small party, and as I was getting ready to leave, the guy I had been talking with, S, kissed me. Felt good, and mentally I had already broken up with M, so I didn't feel too bad at the time. I ended the kiss and told S I needed to break up with M first before leaving. I ended up calling M a few days later to end the relationship. I didn't want to drag it out. I knew I was done. M asked me if there was someone else. I told him no. In my mind, I wasn't breaking up with him to date S. I had already made that decision before meeting S. However, I did have every intention of dating S after we broke up. A kiss may not seem like cheating to some people, but it feels like cheating to me, and I still regret it. I shouldn't have let S kiss me before breaking up with M. He was a really good guy, and he deserved better than that. Story 54. My friend set me up with a guy who was very pushy about being with me. I wanted to take things slow because I sensed I would be just a temporary distraction before he found someone to settle down with. Additionally, I had recently gone through some challenges, working part-time and living in a shared house, which I wanted to leave due to an unusual housemate who interfered with my belongings. I told this guy to slow down, but as usual, I felt pressured and didn't want to lose him since I really liked him. I should have recognized from his aggressive nature that he was not interested in getting to know me, just in having his ideal partner before marrying someone more socially acceptable. About a week into dating him, the new housemate was making it hard for me to feel comfortable and safe. I found a new place to live and arranged for someone to take over my spot. The new share house required a $900 bond in addition to the first month's rent up front. I tried to stay with my brother, but the environment was unsafe due to substance abuse and domestic violence. My friend who set me up was in a similar situation to my brother's house. I earned slightly too much to receive assistance from social welfare organizations. I explained my situation to my boyfriend, stating that I had nowhere to go and requested a loan secured by valuable items, a statutory declaration, or the option to stay with him for 5 days. He was unresponsive and didn't seem to care about my needs, and I explained that I didn't have the privilege of support from my parents. Faced with desperation, I resorted to prostitution to secure the necessary funds. I was honest about what happened, emphasizing my need to take care of myself and expressing my expectation for mutual respect in the relationship. I understood if he didn't want to continue, but I didn't want to waste time under false pretenses. Unfortunately, he used my honesty against me, proving to be a waste of time. I told my friend who set us up that if I had played along better, he might have helped me. Despite that experience, I remained faithful until this same guy refused to accept my desire to break up. I fabricated a lie about cheating, but he didn't believe me. When I did cheat, he somehow found out, It turned out he had installed a tracker on my car and a recording device in my home and bedroom, which was frightening. Story 55. I hadn't come to terms with my sexuality. We got married when I was 20, and I was desperately trying to feel something. I was also young, had unhealed attachment issues, and was projecting my problems onto my relationship instead of looking inward. The worst part is that I cheated with someone of the same gender as my spouse. It took me a while to figure things out for myself, and I hurt people in the process. It has been 13 years. We worked through most of it over time, found a great co-parenting balance, and there is a great deal of trust in our friendship. Story 56. I will help a little. Who is willing to share their experiences of cheating due to lust and sexual reasons? This may involve doing it multiple times with one person, often without that person ever finding out, leaving only you aware of it. Who is willing to share? Story 57. I am reading all of these responses and wondering how to tell the difference between someone who made a mistake and should be given a chance, or if they are a serial cheater and their whole "I have changed" speech is insincere. My luck with finding serial cheaters has been quite bad. Story 58. I cheated because she did it first. One time, I went through her phone and saw videos and photos of her doing things. I acted out of pure anger and jealousy, so one day I offered to pay my female friend to take a couple of explicit photos and videos while also hiding our faces. I invited her to come hang out in my room, pretending to use the bathroom, hoping she would go through my phone and find the videos, thinking she might feel the same. It turns out she did, and when I came back in, she said, "Something came up at home, so I have to go right now." That was the last time I ever saw or heard from her. Story 59. My ex and I were together for 11 years, and things became unhealthy towards the end. She struggled with alcoholism and worsening signs of schizophrenia, including hearing voices, paranoid delusions, and inattentive behavior. I tried to encourage her to seek help many times and in different ways. She wouldn't allow me to talk to her doctor, and it was clear that she was not being honest about the voices she was experiencing. During this time, I had my own substance issues, but I remained functional and was never unemployed, although I may not have been the best partner given the circumstances. We fought frequently, and I ended up living at my parents' house for a few months while we tried to work on our relationship. Eventually, I wanted to move back into the house that I was paying for, but she kept asking for more space. A few weeks later, our downstairs tenants moved out because she would shout to herself alone upstairs and had called the police at least once, believing someone had broken into the house. I used this opportunity to move back in, but separately. Soon after, she mentioned hearing a loud argument outside involving our neighbors and referenced something about her name and her mother's. We didn't even know those neighbors, and I decided that she needed help or I was done forever. While living at my parents' house, I found myself spending time with a mutual female friend whom I had known for over 10 years. Nothing inappropriate occurred, but we connected on some level during that time, and feelings developed beneath the surface. I gave my ex an ultimatum. She needed to see a doctor with me, or I would not be there for her any longer. She declined, and I made my choice. It became clear whom I wanted to be with. She was out of town, so I drove overnight to be with her. There was a month of secrecy. We were still effectively separated, but had not officially ended the relationship. Then, there was a 6-month standoff as we divided assets. Her family was quite wealthy and had paid for 30% of our house in cash up front. I continued dating my new partner throughout this time. We are still together nearly 5 years later, and I never imagined how much better life could be. I do not recommend this approach. My addiction spiraled out of control in those early years, almost causing this relationship to fail as well. I finally realized I had something worth saving, so I made the effort to get sober. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.